Stand for silent reflection and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call here.
Mrs. Cynthia? Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Vorbach? Mayor Mechanical?
Here. I need a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Do we have any questions on the agenda? Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Thank you. No minutes or presentation at this time. We do have scheduled public hearing for an ordinance. That's ordinance number 2014-2, police salary and wages. This is a public hearing. You may step forward and if you have a comment or speak for or against the salary for the police, step forward, just give your name and address.
And Mayor, just by way of background, this ordinance provides for salaries in accordance with the previously approved collective bargaining agreement between the borough and the PBA. And this is for a 5-year period, which includes the current year, retroactive to January 1st, up through and including the year 2018.
Okay, anyone like to step forward? Seeing no hands, I'll close the public hearing for ordinance number 2014-2.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have to publish?
Actually, Mayor, that was to close the hearing at this time, a motion to adopt the ordinance.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Chair. You have a second?
I'll second.
And this is to adopt ordinance 2014-2. Any questions? Roll call, Chair.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Thank you. Next one is public participation for the community development grant. If you have any additions or comments you want to make on the grant, to step forward.
Yes, Mayor, just
Additions?
you may recall that at a previous meeting, we had outlined the borough's intention to participate in the current year CDBG program through the county. Last year, we submitted an application for grant funds for improvements to the community center. That application was reviewed, although did not seek funding approval at the county level. It would be my recommendation that the council consider resubmitting that application for the current year. But this first hearing tonight is to actually solicit suggestions from the public if there are any other community development projects to be considered.
Anyone have suggestions? Step forward, give your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Lionel Marlowe. Actually, I'm from Spring Lake. I'm here also with Patrick Boyle from Spring Lake. We are members of the Wreck Pond Homeowners Association, which includes many people from Spring Lake Heights. Wreck Pond Homeowners Association has been going and attending the meetings of the Wreck Pond Watershed Management Committee, which is Spring Lake Heights, along with Seaver, Wall, and Spring Lake are members of, and you're funding it. And this committee has been working very hard in trying to solve the problems of flooding that occurred during Irene and Sandy, and also just from the water that flows down from Wall Township. One of the solutions that they're coming up with, and DEP is proposing to fund up to an amount of almost $600,000, is to build a berm around Wreck Pond and up to tributaries, which comes up to Route 71. So in your community, Spring Lake Heights, they're talking about a berm, which is like a small hill, maybe only 2 feet high, that is like a fence along the tributary. And the purpose of this is to keep the water that's coming down from Wall Township inside Wreck Pond until it has time to flow to the ocean. So it's a temporary surge of water, and it holds it only for maybe a matter of 8 hours. But without it, your community will flood. So why I'm asking, speaking on this item, is that if this berm is built, which Spring Lake is intending to go ahead with it, it will cause, during this temporary period of water, being held in Wreck Pond, in the impervious area, the water that's flowing into town cannot get to Wreck Pond. You have to modify your storm sewers to permit the water to get into Wreck Pond, which means some pumps and some changing in check valves in the storm sewer line. Spring Lake is looking into this, but this is going to affect Spring Lake Heights. The berm is built will cause flooding in the town unless you modify your storm sewers. I think this is a perfect application, the same thing we're arguing in Spring Lake, is to apply for these funds, because this is money that can be used to improve infrastructure, which is the storm sewers. And it's also in an area of Spring Lake Heights that includes more of your affordable housing, which is one of the criteria. So it's a perfect application for this community grant. And it will allow you to get the $200,000 to modify your pipes when the berm is built.
Could we get a comment from our engineer,
About the berm?
Joe May, in terms of anything you know about the berm and also this changing of the storm?
I am aware of an
drains.
application by DEP to fund the project. I'm not aware of any changes to our storm sewer system. I have to review with Peter Bocci, their engineer, to see what impact it would have on our storm sewer system. And I'm not in a position to comment on it right now.
It's, my understanding is that there was already something in place that was going to build this berm, but didn't involve the community grants. There's not
The
something?
DEP is proposing to fund the berm itself. The Department of Environmental Protection, the State Department of Environmental Protection, is proposing to fund the berm, which they also call a living shoreline part of it.
Which isn't just gonna be in Spring Lake, it's gonna be all the way through. I mean, that would be horrible for us.
It would, well, I don't think it's so horrible, really. It won't be that high, and it will keep the water inside the tributaries and.
No, I mean, if just Spring Lake got built up and then we
Oh, no,
didn't,
no,
then
yeah.
everything would come and build.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks,
that's
guys.
my point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's taking it up to roughly Route 71.
So they're not gonna just do one side and not the other, it would be.
All the
it would be-
tributaries
okay.
and around Red Pond and Red Pond.
So what is it exactly you're proposing then? If the EPA is gonna do that,
They're proposing to do that. They're thinking about being funded within the next couple of years. Your storm sewers, which flow to Red Pond, will have to be modified in some fashion to permit them to either have a check valve to prevent the water from backflowing into your streets
oh, okay.
as the water rises, or you have to catch it or pump it up over the berm, which is only a couple feet high. So there's rather extensive modifications. In Spring Lake, I know there's extensive modifications. I don't know in Spring Lake Heights how many pipes you have draining into Wreck Pond, but I'm sure you have pipes draining into Wreck Pond, and they all have to be modified. It's work that's got to be digging up streets, changing storm drains, so it's money that you'll need, and this to me is a perfect application.
Is it a perfect application? I thought it was more
I'm
development
going to
meant.
reserve comment, quite honestly, in my opinion, if the DEP wants to put berm in, then they should be on the hook to fix our storm sewers, in my opinion. You know, so that's, you know, I mean, I sympathize with Wreck Pond, but, like I said, until I understand exactly who's paying for what, I think we should reserve comment on it.
Okay, but I mean, as far as the application itself, when I hear community development, it does it mean the infrastructure?
There are several categories of improvements that would be eligible. Those improvements do include streetscape, road paving, and stormwater management improvements, particularly in those designated target neighborhoods that have been identified for CDBG eligibility. And the gentleman's correct. Essentially, everything, nearly all property in Spring Lake Heights that is between the railroad track and east of Route 71 is within that low, moderate income area that makes CDBG projects eligible. So we could certainly prepare some preliminary information, and as Mr. May has indicated, and I've participated in several of those living shoreline, the berm meetings on the Rec Pond. It was my understanding that Those improvements would also, by necessity, include some infrastructure to the related municipalities. How much of that, I don't know. I know the current program is securing the necessary funding as well as permits to make that happen.
Well, I think that, you know, I'm all for the community center and development, but it seems to me with our, with Sandy and everything, that this might be something more important. Safety, the homes that flood along that area, we have to feel for their plight, and so I would like to look into that if at all possible.
Chris, you have something?
What is our timeline for doing this? Because obviously, we just heard about this tonight. We're being asked to discuss this grant and make some kind of decision. What is the actual timeline for us to think about this?
The good news is that, and one of the reasons that we have this hearing is to solicit public input. The deadline for filing is either late June or early July. Late June? And we would, before we submit the actual application, there would be another public hearing that the governing body would conduct on the proposed application, and would require council's approval for the submission. We're eligible to submit up one application, and as the gentleman indicated, the maximum funding available is $200,000 per project. I don't think any of the projects that were funded last year were funded at that level.
So, but this gives us time to
Absolutely.
do some fact finding and come back to the council.
Also, timeline when this berm is going to be installed as well.
Mhm. Could be, right.
Working on this for years.
Yeah, right. And meanwhile, we do need an addition to the community center. Yeah.
Anything else?
My problem with it is the west side of 71. What about those houses? You're building a berm, that water's got to go someplace. And I live on the west side.
Yeah, no,
Because that's coming right up Shore Road.
if you want to contribute, they're looking at a second pipeline and it's going to drain right onto the ocean.
That's what they need.
That's roughly $4 million. Spring Lake is thinking about putting up close to $2 million, and they're still short money. So if you want to think of some place to spend your money that has to do with flooding, that second pipeline is one of those things that could be funded. There's really $2 million is being put up by the Fish and Wildlife people. The DEP says they may contribute, but they're very reluctant to put up any money. I don't know why. And Spring Lake is talking about putting up as much as $2 million, and they're still short money. But yes, the second pipeline is almost absolutely necessary to drain all the water that's coming off the Walsh Township down the tributaries. But with the berm, the water would never really hopefully get that high that it would ever back up across west of 71. You know, there's always the 1 in a million's chance of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, we'll be able to get more information from the engineer and the borough administrator in terms of timelines,
Yeah,
when this project's going to take place, and if it's further down the road than our community center project, then we can make a better decision, right?
I'll put a memo together for the council for next year.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
And maybe we have other avenues to get the money for the rest fund, that's not necessarily community development, and if that's possible too.
Anyone else have any suggestions?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And Mayor, just so the record's clear, it would be appropriate to have a formal vote to close this CDBG hearing.
Seeing no other hands, need a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this point in the meeting, we have the public comment section, where you may speak on the agenda items. So if you have any agenda item you'd like to speak on, just step forward, give your name and address. And seeing no one stepping forward, we'll close the public comment section. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next thing on the agenda is the discussion of the 2014 municipal budget on the district.
Yeah, I put this all together. No, Jay did. Jay came up with the discussion.
Like a hot potato.
And Mayor, as was previously indicated, tonight that we are presenting for the council's preliminary review the budget and all associated documents. With us in attendance tonight is John Barrett from PM Consultants, our financial consultant. And if I may take a few minutes just to walk you through the documents and give you a brief overview. We have already scheduled for next Monday night at 7:30 a special meeting for what I'll call a in-depth review of the budget. The plan was to present tonight, provide the council with an opportunity to review, come in with questions, and perhaps a little better indication of where you'd like to see us. And our plan is to introduce not at our special meeting, but rather our first meeting in April. In any event, we've compiled a lot of information. Starting at the top, the orange sheet, and we've distributed copies for the public. This is a budget worksheet. It's marked clearly as the 24 budget summary. The first 2 pages are technically not part of the budget, but rather they provide us with summaries and analysis of the various appropriations as well as revenues, and provide a comparison year to year so that we can compare current year figures with last year's figures. And most importantly, I guess I'll cut right to the chase. On page 1, line 28, based on this presented budget, this anticipates or proposes a 1 1/2 cent increase in the tax rate. Last year's tax rate was 33.63 cents, and this would increase that tax rate by 1 1/2 cents. That translates into, well, let me walk through this. First of all, at the top, we have the fund balance. And again, on both the current fund as well as our utility fund, we've outlined the available budget, available surplus in each of those funds, and how much is proposed in the current year. I'm going to skip over all references to water and sewer at this time, and we'll come back to that because the water and sewer is technically a separate part of the budget. The next section, starting at line 9, is the tax levy calculation, and this is the amount to be raised by taxes at line 26. As I mentioned previously, line 28 translates that amount to be raised from taxes into the local tax rate. Below that, we have the summary of the assessments of taxable value of taxable properties in town, and that is broken down based on the properties categories as vacant land, residential properties, commercial properties, and apartment properties. And you can see that at line 35, our total assessed valuation has dropped from last year by about $7.5 million. That is primarily the result of tax appeals that were approved last year. I think the council has been monitoring them during the course of last year. At line 37, this total assessment is marked as preliminary. Unlike prior years where the tax assessments were set as of January 1st, we are in the first year of the Monmouth County Assessment Pilot Project. And as we speak, I guess all of the tax appeals that were filed locally have been heard and decided at the tax board level. So within a very short period of time, we will actually have a final assessment number to base our tax rate on. But these numbers in this proposed budget is calculated on the basis of the preliminary assessment figures that the assessor has provided. And you recall that in past years, we would actually introduce our budget, and property owners had until April to actually file appeals. They were generally not decided until June or July, well after our budget was actually adopted. That created situations where we were refunding taxes based on the new successful tax appeals, and that had a direct impact on our current year tax collections as well as subsequent year tax assessment values as well. So
There's no estimate, and there's no estimation on here as far as the current.
That's correct.
How much more this is going to come down.
That there is none at this time.
Did you say by Monday, next Monday there will be or not?
I'm actually not sure what the status of the tax appeal or what. I know the tax appeals have been heard at the county tax board. Those are in the process of being decided by the tax board, so it'll be very close to an April 1st date that we should have a final assessment valuation. The next section translates at line 38, provides information on the average properties. And again, this is broken down by the average residential property, which in the current year is estimated to be about $454,000. That is a slight reduction from last year. The average commercial properties actually saw an increase, a slight increase in average commercial valuation, and likewise the average apartment properties saw a slight increase in their average assessment. Based on our total assessment, the impact of a 1 cent increase on the average property translates into about $50. So in this case, we're talking about a 1 1/2 cent increase in the tax rate. This would translate into approximately a $75 tax increase for the average property. To put this another way, a 1 cent increase in the tax rate generates about $114,000 in revenue. Or alternatively, any reduction in appropriations and spending that amounts to $114,000 will result in a 1 cent decrease in our tax rate. The bottom section on the first page provides a summary. This is last year's taxes, the breakdown of county library, county open space, the school tax, and then the municipal tax. And you can see that approximately 27% of the total tax bill that a property owner pays in Spring Lake Heights is for municipal purposes. About 22% goes to the county, and more than half of the total tax bill is for the local school tax. Moving on to the second page, we provided a calculation of the reserve for uncollected taxes. The reserve for uncollected taxes is a calculation that's required. It is a non-spending appropriation. It is funds that we set aside to, and it reflects the fact that since not all property owners pay their taxes on time, yet the borough, because we collect the taxes not only for the local tax but also for the county and the school, we are required to pay the county and the school 100% of their taxes as they become due. So this reserve for uncollected taxes is a non-spending appropriation that provides a reserve to cover the fact that not all people pay their taxes on time. The next section is the tax levy calculation, and we are subject to 2 separate caps. The first is the tax levy cap, which is a relatively new limit on how much the tax levy can increase from year to year. The last section there at line 51 is the appropriation cap. And again, we are subject to limitation on the amount of appropriation increase from year to year. And I can tell you that based on this proposed budget, both the tax cap levy have been met as well as the appropriation cap. And I'll ask John Barrett to perhaps explain that in further detail or answer any questions if there are any on that issue when we come to it.
Sure, I think you've done a great job. The good news is that based on the calculations, both your appropriation cap, there's still some wiggle room there. If we needed to have an unforeseen emergency, a spike in gas prices or something of that nature, we'd be able to appropriate funds for that. And on the second quarter, the second half, this is the levy cap, because you've done a good job as far as restraining the increase in taxes over the last few years. The council has that flexibility right now, so that if there is an emergency or a need, that they could increase taxes and still live within the governor's 2% levy cap.
Starting on page 3 is the actual budget numbers. The first section are the revenues, and again it starts with the surplus. We are anticipating the same level, using the same level of surplus as last year, $290,000. Miscellaneous revenues, these reflect essentially the license permits fees that are generated within the borough, and there's really not too much change from last year. I would point out that the municipal court revenues were up fairly substantial. Last year we anticipated $105,000 and we realized $122,000. So we have increased our anticipation of those revenues, not to the full 122,000, but up to 120,000. The next section B, the state aid without offsetting appropriations. The energy receipts tax remains unchanged. I believe this is year 6 now that the energy receipts have not been increased. Uniform Construction Code, Section C, the interlocal service revenue from the Board of Education at Section D. Section F are those items that are commonly referred to as grant programs, and as we proceed with the budget process, some of these numbers we will start to see fill in as we receive formal notification of the approval. And I will mention that these grant revenues are offset directly by appropriations, so they have no direct tax impact. These are simply revenues that we'll receive as a grant and we're required to spend them for a specific purpose. Moving on to page 4, the Section G revenues. This reflects the various items as outlined. And then starting at line 15 is just a recap of all of the revenues. Line 27, receipts from delinquent taxes. The good news is that our tax collection rate actually increased last year. Not significantly, it was about 0.02%. But the good news there is met with this number, which is that because more people paid their taxes on time last year, we actually had less delinquent taxes at the end of last year. Therefore, we can only anticipate a lower amount from delinquent taxes in the current year. Moving on to page 5. These are the general appropriations that are within caps. And again, I know the council will review these in detail, but there were a couple of items I did want to point out specifically. At line 25 on page 5, we've added a new appropriation for the assessment pilot program. We anticipate a cost of approximately $12,500 to provide the inspections of 20% of the properties that we are required to perform under this assessment pilot program that the county has adopted. So that is a new appropriation. Likewise, at line 52, it has been some years since police vehicles have been replaced. We have included the specific appropriation for the replacement of 1 police vehicle. So that is included in this budget at this time. And this would put us back on track to replace vehicles on an ongoing basis. I should mention also that this is only my almost second full year here. And it had been the directive of the prior Finance Committee and the Council that we were still coming out of what I guess were commonly called difficult economic times. And wherever possible, there were a number of expenditures that have been deferred in the past couple of years. And both for reasons of the economy in general, as well as some specific spikes that we had to account for in prior year's budget, specifically that relate to debt service costs. And I'll talk about that as we go through this. In any event, the return of this appropriation is putting us back on regular funding for police operations.
Hey, Jay, for mayor and council salaries and wages, I don't take a salary. Is that going to be reflected in the updated budget?
That could be. The accompanying worksheet that I've included here does provide full funding for all the council's positions.
I know you budget for the position, but...
If you're requesting that that be removed and that's the council's design, we can certainly remove that. I'll make that note. That would reduce that appropriation by about $3,000.
Now, when we have the insurance, the employee group health insurance, does that include the police and public works?
It includes all employees. And in fact, I should mention that this is the net number. As you're aware, all employees now are contributing various amounts towards their health insurance. So this reflects the net of that, John, is that correct?
Yes, Councilman, the estimated cost for employee health care as we have it now is about $541,000. The contributions we're expecting from employees is about almost $47,000. So the net figure, which is close to the budget here, is what we need to budget. We don't anticipate a revenue. we put the net figure in as per the DOT.
Hey, now, the increase in salary and wages for instance, the police, that's $140,000 for $141,000 a year. Is there something else in there? If not, the union?
Actually, it's about
It shouldn't be that much.
It's about
It's about
60,000.
60, it's about 60.
And that reflects the newly negotiated salary increase,
Yeah.
as well as the, not only the adjustment to the pay scale, but also there are 4 police officers that are going through the scale.
60, it's the 60.
Yes. The difference between the $1,351,000.
All right, and then but the public works is $100,000.
Yes,
The
and
salaries and wages.
if you'd like, we're ready to go to page 6. Public Works, you'll recall that last year, we started the process of reallocating the Public Works salaries. In prior years, there was, and I'll refer you specifically to page 7, line 23. There had been a prior practice of allocating stormwater, salaries for Public Works that were described as stormwater. So we have reallocated those inside the cap, and so that's the $90,000 difference.
Okay, all right.
You skipped ahead.
I don't know where are those raises coming from.
Let's see, what else? Also, in Public Works, starting at line 14 on page 6. Again, there had been questions earlier in this year related to snow removal, overtime costs, and other costs related to that. We are now eligible to do 2 things. One, we are specifically identifying both the overtime cost with a separate salary line item, as well as other snow removal costs, primarily the purchase of salt. Some recent changes to the state budget requirements allow us to reserve these funds and carry them over in future years. So by allocating them or specifically identifying them as such, will provide us with that ability in the future.
And now, in order for overtime to happen, Jay, does that have to come through you?
For what I would call overtime related to storm emergencies, no. Obviously, we know in advance usually that there is a pending storm, and preparations begin usually 24 hours before. So those are not surprising. Any other emergencies, I am notified, but I don't provide prior approval of those. I'm provided again in an emergency. Recently, we had a water leak, water break on Route 71. That took place at 3 o'clock in the morning. Thankfully, they waited until about 7 o'clock to call me. But what I would call scheduled overtime does require both the approval of the department head as well as of myself.
So if there was any abnormal, there's nothing abnormal going on?
That's correct.
I mean, it's, you know, when I first came on, there was a little bit of abnormal, but the past 7 years, I haven't seen it. Nearly
Yep.
the same.
Most overtime, particularly in Public Works, is related to either utility call-outs or snow removal storm events. Again, I don't think there's too many other changes in the appropriations other than those specific items that I wanted to point out. Moving through onto page 8 under debt service at line 34. Our bond principal and interest is relatively stable. You'll recall that 2 years ago we had a 1-year spike. There was essentially the final payment in our 2003 bond issue had what I'll call a mini balloon at the end where we had to fund level much higher than this, so we are now on a relatively level debt service on the current side. This also does include, I should point out that the question will undoubtedly come up. We anticipate as a revenue on page 4, line 12, the $50,000 that will come from our open space trust fund on an annual basis to pay the proportional share of our existing debt that was related to the acquisition of the property on O'Leary Road. Moving on to page 9, the water sewer utility. The good news, and I will emphasize that the very good news on the utility side is that last year was actually the 3rd year of a transition in our water sewer utility. we had several things happening there. You will recall that 2 years ago, the water and sewer rates were adjusted, but in the year that they were implemented, we didn't receive a full year benefit of those increased rates. Last year, we did receive the full year based on those increases. Our water sewer operation in 2012 operated at a deficit that we needed to cover last year. In 2013, the utility operated, because we were able to generate the full year revenue, operated in the black. We are not anticipating using any surplus in the water sewer utility this year. And again, the plan is, as I've understood with the implementation of those new rates, is to develop a reserve, a surplus to stabilize rates for an extended period of time. And that's happening this year. And that's accomplished by means of, one, the fact that we are generating full year revenue streams. We no longer have a deficit that we needed to fund. And probably as importantly, last year was our balloon year on our utility debt service. So this year, in fact, if you refer page 9, line 41, you'll see that last year our debt service in the utility was $178,000 in bond principal. This year, it's $55,000.
Well, that's the reason why we had the problem with the water in the first place, but it was one balloon payment, that was for the water meters, right? That
Actually,
was
this goes back to the 2003 debt issue. What was specifically funded, I couldn't comment.
It was how the water meters was funded, was that it would be a low payment, and then we were gonna have one balloon payment at the end.
So the $55,000 is a more realistic, and in fact, if I may jump ahead, behind this budget summary are 2 pages of salary summary, and then a sheet that is marked, and it looks like this. It's marked as debt service from 2011 through 2026. This will provide specifically the information on the debt service on both the current side as well as the water sewer utility. And you can see that on the current, which is the green shaded area at the top, in 2014, our bond principal and interest will total $155,900. That's highlighted in yellow. You'll see that over the next 13 years, that number varies very little. It essentially stays level in the 155 to 150, basically 150 to 160 range. So that debt service is level. Likewise,
But I just want to point out that that mainly has to do with what was done in 2011, right? 2011, John, when we restructured our debt in order to, so that we could then in 2012 and 2013 have 0 increases. It was because of that debt restructuring.
You current, at the time, you had outstanding bond anticipation notes that you basically permanently funded through MCA pooled loan. And that pooled loan gave you the advantage of a low interest rate because you had a AAA rating on their credit, and obviously a conforming debt schedule for the next few years until it's paid off. One of the inserts of the annual debt statement that will show you the detail, Jay has included in this, so you can see what our outstanding debt is as of 12/31/2013.
But I just want to point out that in 2011, we did two things. We refinanced all our debt, and we also, the dissolution of the fire district also helped us in order to have 2 stable years following in 2012 and 2013. Was that made financial years a lot better, right?
Sure, and the only thing that's lingering from the dissolution of the fire district is a capital lease for equipment that we were paying off as part of the capital debt service in your current fund budget.
So I mean, what we're seeing now is from a few years ago when we were able to do certain things on council as far as restructuring our debt, and that's the reason why it's stable. It's stable going forward. We had a few years where we had to pay because of the water utility. But I think going forward, we should be in a better place because of our debt restructuring.
Well, now you have a conforming schedule, which makes things easier to plan. Yeah.
and while we're looking at this schedule, The lower section is the debt service on water utility that you just referenced. And I would point out that if you look under the 2011 column, you'll see that the utility had $42,000 in bond principal payment that year. In 2012, it jumped to $125,000, and last year jumped to $206,000. Last year, though, as I had been saying for the last 2 years, that those were the hump years in the water utility.
That was a non-conforming bond schedule
Correct.
for the water meters.
And you'll see that starting this year, the utility bond principal and interest is about $81,000, and again, that remains relatively level for the next 7 years until it's paid off. So those are both, that's both very good news on, as far as debt service on both our current side as well as the water sewer utility.
So I just want to, there had been a habit in the past to do this short-term loans that ended up with balloon payments, and it made our debt very unstable when I came on and we were able to level that out, and it's now stable. Our debt is stable for all the way through, in some ways, 2026.
Starting on page 9 is the water sewer utility budget. The upper third of the page from lines 4 to 21 are the revenue side. And you can see that this year we are anticipating just over $2.1 million in water and sewer revenues. That's at line 11. And in prior years, we were required to break out the what was marked as miscellaneous is the remnants of I guess it was the surcharge that had been established some years ago, as well as line 18 was the anticipated rents due to the increased ordinance. We have all that behind us, and the total water and sewer revenues will be showing up as they are here on line 10. The appropriations, we have started to increase a little bit the capital improvement section here. Again, now that we're over the utility hump, we're starting to reserve funds for capital improvements on the water and sewer utility. So this budget anticipates and projects increasing the level of funding for those capital improvements. The back page, page 10, is our dedicated open space, recreation, farmland, and historic preservation trust. And again, we have specifically budgeted here for the payment of the proportional share of the bond principal and interest related to the Alair Road property. The next 2 pages are a detailed summary of the salaries and wages for each department, and there are notes regarding the positions that are covered by collective bargaining agreements, and I think you'll be looking at it closely, and we'll probably have some questions regarding that in our next meeting. But you will see that these numbers coincide with the budget appropriations as well. We already talked about the debt service. That essentially is the overview of the budget. I'll walk you quickly through the balance of the documents that are included in the budget. The pink section is the annual debt statement and the annual financial statement. These essentially reflect unaudited results of operations for 2013. The first 10 pages or so are the annual debt statement, and as Mr. Barrett has indicated, provide some detail as far as our bonded indebtedness that we just talked about.
And that total percentage is on the first page there, so our .19.
Yes, you go to 3%, so.
Right, we're well under the allowable limit of bonding.
Outstanding debt is not an issue for this borough.
Good.
We are essentially at the 1/15th of our allowable level of bonding. And again, that reflects the fact that we don't carry a lot of indebtedness on the books and have a program in place to retire all indebtedness within 7 years on the utility side, and I believe it's 13 years on the current side. The second part of that pink section is the annual financial statement, and again provides unaudited results from last year. The yellow copy is the formal budget document for last year. Just for reference purposes, this is the 40-some-odd page budget form that is required by the state. We summarize it in the 10-page, easily referenced worksheets, but eventually, when we are to the point of introduction, our budget will be the full 40-some page document. The next section in green, we have the current fund. For each budget account, we have a summary report, and then that's followed by the detailed report for each purchase order that was charged to each budget account last year. And then the final two documents are likewise the summary, the budget summary, and budget detail for the utility fund. And again, all that information as far as the total expenditures for last year.
Can I just confirm that there's no missing money in the open space fund?
I've been alerted to any missing money. If I found that.
Just wanted to make certain that's on the record.
I would also add to the administrator's points that as we go through this process, some figures will change. So, you know, this is a great draft as to what you should expect. And as we tweak the numbers, we will advise you of the revised figures.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Very nice. Everything that you prepared, I must say, Jay, is very nice. I like to get this before we have introduction to the budget. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Tom.
And I'm sure we'll have lots of discussion for Monday.
Yes.
So just
I would
whatever.
anticipate.
So yeah, look through it and
I appreciate it.
we'll all be here Monday.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Jay, collect his thoughts, you okay? Jay, after that?
I'm sorry, Nick?
Are you okay after that?
I'm ready for Monday. I should
You
mention
think so?
that in addition to John Barrett, Tom Seaman, our CFO tax collector, will also be in attendance on Monday for any questions that the council has.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll start with the council reports. Start with Councilwoman King.
Okay. I have a couple of things. First of all, as we've been hearing on the news, we are expecting another snowstorm, hopefully the last one of the season. And I would just again like to reiterate that we still have people leaving their cars and trucks and whatever on the roadway. You will be ticketed or towed away, so just a heads up. Get them removed, put them someplace in your yard or somebody else's yard that maybe you can use. But we would like you to adhere to that if you can. The other thing I want to mention is I'm sure that the majority of people in town have heard that the 7-Eleven at the southern end of town, there was an armed robbery, and it was reported in the papers. We are not at liberty, if anyone had any plans on asking any questions tonight in reference to that, we are not at liberty to discuss it, comment, because it is an ongoing investigation. And the article that was put in the Co-Star was quite informative and very well written, and gave the story pretty complete. I would just say that once we have any information to give out, we will, whether it'll be via one of our meetings or via the newspaper. But I just want to caution anyone that may want to ask a question that we cannot answer anything here this evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cindy.
No, I have nothing. And I hope it's true that this is going to be the last one.
Councilman Bryant.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Jay and John for all their hard work putting the budget together, and just remind everybody that we do have that budget meeting March 31st, that's Monday, so that we can come prepared and if you have any comments, I'm sure you all do. We'll hash this out and hopefully get the budget adopted shortly after.
Come to the puppet?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can come
Yes, sir.
hear us argue about it.
Thank you, Tom.
7:30, not 8 o'clock?
That is the current schedule, yeah, 7:30.
7:30.
7:30, Monday, March 31st.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Tinker?
Hey, Mayor, yes. Tonight on the agenda, we have the Ad hoc Recreation Facilities Working Group. Some of you may have seen the article in the paper at the Co-Star. Thank you, Karen, for that article. Good job. Like I said at the last meeting, we're putting together a working group to look at all the open space in the town for parks and recreation to come up with an overall holistic strategic plan. We have a lot of open space. So many of our parks need to be upgraded. We're in the process of doing that. But I wanted to put together a more complete program, and I think also that'll help us when we go for grants, if we have some type of long-term strategic plan in place. I think it makes it more likely that we can get grant funding for those kinds of things. So, Mayor, we're going to approve that list tonight, and then I will be getting into contact with the committee members, and we'll have 1 to 2 meetings and bring some ideas to the council for their consideration.
Very good, Christian. Thank you. I think that's it. Okay. Reports and notices. Do we have anything on there anyone would like to speak on? I think everything's straightforward.
Mayor, just in the absence of Councilman Borbach, who chairs a grant committee, there are 2 notifications regarding DOT grants. Borough Engineer Joe May will be putting together a proposal for submission. It is my understanding that we've had previous discussion regarding the Safe Routes to Schools grant program that the borough was successful in obtaining some years ago. So we will be looking at that and potentially something under the transportation alternative for submission.
Are we going to narrow down on the streets?
We will. This will force us to revisit that issue, but I'm not familiar with the current funding requirements, but it is primarily for streets that are close or that are school routes.
I'm so scared of Old Mill Road. I mean, some days it's going to.
It's
Does
for
that matter?
routes within 2 miles of schools, so that, in our town, that pretty much.
Covers almost everything.
Yeah, right. 2 miles.
And Joe already put together, you already have a preliminary map
Put together a
of,
preliminary priority map, and
For sidewalks.
also a working document, but we do have a map put together that can easily be modified.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that it, Jay?
Sit there.
Thank you. No ordinance introduction at this time. We do have some resolutions. We begin with Resolution R 2014-60, this authorizing the recycling tonnage grant application. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And do we have any questions?
It still indicates our turn.
Pardon me?
Yes, in fact, this will be his final recycling report. It's due April 1st.
So it's not the final one?
Well, this is actually for
Oh,
last
oh,
year,
oh, okay,
for the
all right.
2013 year. So
Never mind. Never mind. Oh.
Anything else? Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. Cynthia,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-61, approving the community center for nursery school. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. Cynthia,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-62, this is appointing a member to the Recreation Working Group. Need a motion and a second?
And Mayor, just before the meeting, you had indicated to me that you had, this resolution was prepared and distributed with some blanks as far as residents. And you'd indicated,
Yes, I have 4 members and 1 alternate that I've already put on there. Yes.
and those are, I was given the name of Mr. and Mrs. Nolan,
Yes.
former Mayor Malik,
Yes.
and Brian O'Gibney
Yes.
From Fairway Muse.
Yes.
And that Gary McLean would serve as the alternate for the Environmental Commission rep.
Yes, in case Ms. Crippen can't make it for whatever reason. Yes, okay? And that's mine. In addition to everyone else here. Do we have to name them, or Chris, you want to name
No,
them?
it's on the
Okay,
resolution.
thank you. We have a motion and a second?
Does everybody have a copy of that resolution? Oh, okay, well, then let me,
You go
Mayor,
ahead.
you want to name them,
Yes,
or?
You could name, did Chris?
Okay, so it's, all right, obviously, the mayor, myself, Eric Gardner, representing the Board of Education. We invited the superintendent of schools as well. I don't know if he's going to attend, but we wanted to bring him in. The residents that the mayor just said, Tom DeFazio, the head of Little League, Bill Thurman, who does youth football, Kat Crippen for our Environmental Commission, and Deirdre Fallon from the Beautification Committee. So it sounds like there'll be 12 or 14 of us who will conduct brainstorming sessions and bring ideas back to the council.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
Roll
you.
call, Jim.
I'm sorry, was there?
Roll call. Roll call.
Oh, we can make a resolution in a second.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Oh, yes, don't we have it? Roll call, Jim.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinker?
Yes.
Resolution R 2014-63, appointing Mr. Martin to the Board of Adjustment. Need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Do you have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask that we table this for tonight? I know we have two positions that actually need to be filled, and maybe we can bring two names, bring another name back on Monday or the following meeting and appoint both of them at the same time. So I'd like to make a motion to table until we appoint both at the same time.
I'll second that motion.
Anyone who have a question on that?
If we do that, it takes us over our 30-day period, and then, Butch doesn't get to make a recommendation unless you want to waiver that.
Well, this would be his recommendation. Tom would be his recommendation. We bring another one to get them done at the same time.
Well, one of the other thought processes that I have been discussing with Jay is I understand that there are several towns that have instituted a person that is presently on either the Board of Adjustment and they also serve on the planning board, or they're on the planning board and they also serve on the Board of Adjustment. And I was going to throw that out to see how the rest of the council would feel about someone who is existing on the planning board presently as a member. There's certain people that would be exempt, but if we could come up with someone that would fill that other vacancy so that one person from the board would be in tune on both boards, and it's not an uncommon practice.
I'd actually like to keep that separate, but first I'd like to deal with this tabling motion.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Can we deal with the tabling motion? I'd like to keep them separate, actually. But I don't, other council members can weigh in, but I think the Board of Adjustment should be separate from the planning board.
Well, it does keep it separate, it's just that it's a person that is informative and sits on both, and it's not an uncommon practice.
The planning board is, and the Board of Adjustment, it would be a conflict to serve on.
No, it would,
It would seem.
no, it would not.
It's not legally a conflict, but I'd like to keep it, personally, I'd like to keep it separate. And I'd like to take both of these at the same meeting, so I'm asking that I'm making a motion to table this.
I see.
There's a reason why we just changed the planning board's date, meeting date. We changed the planning board's meeting date because the
Bless you.
planning board had adjudicates on things before the Board of Adjustment. So to be a member on both, it would seem it would be.
Can we deal with
I see
the-
no reason for tabling this. If you're gonna bring somebody up at the next meeting,
We'll just
we'll
vote
go
on
ahead.
I think
And
we
we'll go on that. So I don't see why we should table this now.
Well, Chris has a motion and a second, we can take a vote on
Take a vote on tabling? Yeah. Okay.
it. We do have a motion and a second, correct?
Mhm.
Any other question on the table?
Vote to table.
We still, I mean, at the next meeting, if we can just put these two.
Yeah. Bring another name.
Roll call on the table.
Vote to-
On the motion to table Resolution R 2014-63, Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
No.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
3 votes to table that.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-64, opposing testing of the Atlantic Ocean. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Any question?
Hey, Mayor, I don't know if everybody had a chance to read, there's a proposal to conduct seismic air testing off the coast to look for, pockets of oil. Of course, I oppose any kind of drilling or testing or anything off of our ocean. It's really part of our livelihood here, tourism, and I don't want to see anything that would disrupt that. There is research to suggest that this kind of seismic air testing does disrupt, the wildlife, the fishing. You can also feel some of these things if they're close enough to the shore. So I just wanted to join with Bradley Beach in expressing our dissatisfaction about an idea like this happening off of our coast.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second, correct? Yes, sir. Roll call, Jim?
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution R 2014-65, approving Hurricane Sandy emergency contract to High Tech Landscape. Need a motion and a second?
And Mayor, before you take that motion, I just should point out that there's a minor typographical error in the resolution. The resolution title should indicate that it's a resolution of the Borough Council instead of Township Council.
Okay.
Yeah. We never noticed
Mr. May knows to point it out.
Oh, yeah. Roll call, Jim.
We didn't do a motion. I'll make a
I'll
motion.
second.
I'll second.
I'm sorry.
Second, I'll third.
Jay, can you just give us an update on this?
Actually, Mr.
Or
May's
Mr.
here.
May? You and I did walk the property. Things are looking good.
We received bids Thursday, and we had a pretty good cross-section of bids. We have one low bidder, of course, people that are, the general medium, I would say, and 2 high bidders. I have reviewed the submission, we met all the requirements, all the bid docs are in order. I forwarded them on to the attorney. The attorney has no reason to reject them. Correct, Scott?
Do we have the insurance requirements? Do we have to make certain that the insurance
That's part of the bid
is
specs.
primary non-contributory? And their insurance is primary non-contributory?
Yes.
Can I get something that's
We'll
insurance
provide you with
certificate?
the insurance requirements and the
Is it in the bid specs?
The bid specs, they'll have to provide us, once the contract is awarded, there's a requirement they provide us with additional insurance information, but the preliminary information is they've provided the required certificates.
And that's under state contract law.
It's very hard to get that, so just as long as we're primary non-contributory. I'm a little concerned at the difference in the bid. I mean, one's almost $200,000 and we have the low bid of $41,000.
I
exactly
understand your
happened?
concern, but being an engineer, knowing some of these contractors, I'm not surprised.
And you're comfortable with,
Yes.
Okay.
This is
I
not-
called
this is
the
not-
contractor, low bidder, I reviewed scope of work, I reviewed the equipment requirements, I reviewed DEP permit requirements with them, reviewed the prevailing wage requirements, and asked him if he's comfortable with his number. He's indicated to me he is comfortable with his number, so we're going to move ahead based on that.
And the first 5 or 6 bids are pretty close. This is the last 2 that are.
Yeah.
Anything else on that, Joe?
No, sorry. Or just overlooking to probably hit the ground beginning of April. We have a mid-May deadline with the federal government.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have a motion and a second on that?
make a motion.
Which I already have a motion by Mrs. King, seconded by Mr. Schuler.
Okay. A roll call, Jim.
Mrs. Cynthia?
I abstain.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin.
Yes.
Thank you. A motion to move the bills to the Finance Committee?
I will make the motion to move the bills to the Finance
I'll
Committee.
second.
Any questions? Roll call, Jeff.
Mrs. Cynthia,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-66, approving the 2014 bill list. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Do we have any questions on that? Roll call, Jeff.
Mrs. Cynthia,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin.
Yes.
Mayor, if I may also, since Mr. May is here, at the time we received the bids for this project, we also received bids for the improvements to Alaire and Ocean Road parks. I guess those are still in review. We had hoped that they would actually be ready perhaps with a bid award recommendation. That has not happened yet. But with the council's permission, because we do have a special meeting scheduled for next week, I'd like to have that renoticed, that formal action may be taken on this matter, because we would like to get that project rolling.
Absolutely. And how was the business?
That's fine.
How were they?
I had no issue. We received six bids. 7 people picked up, 6 responded, and we're all within, well, a little bit was within 10% of my estimate, so
Oh, good, good, all right.
we're happy with that. We're gonna look at, this project kind of morphed as we moved along. We added some little bit improvements and some different things. There was some change from the original playground structure at Ocean Road. We got moved to Alaire Road, and that got bigger. So we have a set of 4 alternates. So I'll be in a position to review with the council next week how you guys want to award. We did that because we knew the bids were going to be higher than some of the money we had. But I think that we're in a good position to award the 2 base bids, 3 of the alternates. One of the alternates came extremely high, and I don't think it's advantageous to award that, but I'll leave that for next week.
Okay, now, as far as the playground structure, I know we were talking about those climbing rocks. And I was not for that.
Those were removed.
Okay, no
Yes,
longer, all right, I was just worried about falls.
A
Yeah.
straight out of the box hot rod structure.
Okay.
Yeah, good, thank you.
At this point in the meeting, we have the public comments again. You may speak on any item. Just step forward, give your name and address. Seeing no one, no hands, need a motion to close the public comment section.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And need a motion and a second to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
See you, Dave.
Good night.
Good night.
Saturday, we got-
Turn this off.